I know exactly how fragile and weak love and peace are in the face of reality, but I profess for them anyway. I can't bring them alone. Each person holds it in their heart and tries to create a world based around them. This is a quote from a Japanese superhero show, Kamen Rider Bill, where the central theme is about striving for love and peace in a world that have gone too far without them. Despite how recent this quote is, it stuck with me and reminded me of someone who'd been trying to raise my siblings on. Today, I would like to share with you someone in my life who has influenced me greatly, my mother, Yako Sato. My mother works hard to maintain an optimistic view on everything and pushes my sibling and I to live life firmly believing in love and peace. It's only ironic then that living with such principles does cloud her judgment on more decisive issues. I too want to live in a world where love and peace is upheld above all, and I'll improve on what my mother believes in by trying to understand the other side and thus to see such positivity. My mother has an overwhelming level of patience despite having to take care of four radically different children whose egos constantly clash with one another. Back in the days of VHS, I remember rewatching one family video where my youngest brother was recently born and my older sister and I were attempting to record him. I would have been 5 and my older sister would have been 9, and 2 minutes in, we're already fighting on who gets to hold the camera. I was on the verge of crying when my mother helped in this pointless squabble by allowing my older sister to continue filming and allowed me to play and interact with my younger brother. I believe my younger sister was in the background and my mother was taking care of her so she wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. It may have been because we were recording this scene or because she didn't want to scare the newly born siblings, but my mother made sure that his first exposure of his older siblings weren't of hate, but rather misguided attempts to show him love and affection. This is how some of the VHS recordings were like. My siblings and I were getting out of hand, and my mother in the background calming us down to behave and play nice with each other, no matter the situation. My mother always finds a way to make us behave in manners, so we aren't always fighting against something petty. Unfortunately, some battles can be ended with such pretty words. Such an ideal like love and peace, you risk falling into pitfalls of passivity, and unfortunately my mother will occasionally fall into them. I mostly contribute this to our age now, but every once in a while, my sibling and I will still argue about something petty. However, the argument has a certain gravitas that our elementary school days fight lack, and thus it's harder for my mother to step in the fight. Coupled with us going a little bit more overboard with our comebacks, and my mother can't pick a side anymore to see who's in the wrong or who's in the right, and all she can respond is stop fighting and love each other. Her parental approach is passive in nature, so she can't all of a sudden plant her foot and straight up and fight herself. Her more or less please does get to us, and eventually we'll say our final words and leave the room so both parties can cool heads. Before the fighting were a lot more childish in nature and thus can be easily stopped. But these type of fights are now battles of egos. We're trying to see which one of us is right and which one of us is wrong. Sometimes our arguments could just be like, why can you do this but I can't do that? Or your opinion on this matter is incorrect, and so and so. While something like love and peace can be a great ideal to stop a fight like this, but understandably it is difficult to know how to apply such principles. Which side end up correct? Which side is more wrong? Is it right to defend this side or not? My mother probably thought of this and tries her best to go for the middle ground to end the fight. She meant well tried to keep my sibling and I from absolutely hating each other, but sometimes there are clear limits to simply accepting each other's issues. What I have said here is just a glimpse of how my mother has dealt with us growing up and how much sincerity she holds for us kids, even when our most petulant. She wants us to love each other, and despite how much we may differ from one another, and happily live as a family instead of constantly spiting each other. I want to emulate her ideals because this is something pure in living life with not only pretty words, but also the conviction to push others to love past our flaws. Love and peace is a fragile concept, but what makes it so profound and powerful that it lies with everybody, and all we gotta do is try to express those two loudly.